This podcast may contain explicit language. Welcome to the Greatest Movie of All Time podcast, the show that uses a unique grading style to redefine what the greatest movies are. I'm Tom Duncan.
And I'm Dana Duncan.
We also welcome back our returning celebrity guest, our now second most frequent guest, making his non-Duncan record 10th appearance, host and creator of the Best Picture cast, coming to us live from the plumbing aisle at Home Depot. It's Kieran B.
Yes, it is good to be back here in the G-Mote swing. I feel like I'm becoming the parenthesis around here, but I am happy to join you guys on a movie I appreciate quite a bit. And yeah, number 10. 10's good. Chipper Jones.
We are definitely an escape for you.
No doubt.
So what are you going to do with your t-shirt? You'll be the first non-Duncan, non-host of this show to have a t-shirt.
It's a nice t-shirt.
I'm honored. I may hang it up to fill the wall up a little bit. I may cut the sleeves off and wear it when I'm running. I don't know. I haven't decided yet, but it will be cherished either way.
My mother still hasn't figured out what the precedent is for 15, but she hinted at a jacket of some sort, and I'm like, no, that's dangerous territory.
Yeah, number 10. Good to be here. It's been a good couple years now doing this, right?
Yeah, I think April of 2023 was your first time on.
Wow, exciting stuff. So good to be back.
We also welcome back our other celebrity guest, who is joining Kieran in the Five Timers Club this evening, co-host of the War Starts at Midnight podcast. Please welcome back Peterson W. Hill.
Always good to be back. Strapping on the seat. 30,000 miles. We're going. Let's do it.
Well, you definitely look like the wind blew through your hair this evening.
Yeah. I'd put the windows down on the way home. Make sure it swept me away. Look just like George Clooney.
What are you going to do with your hat?
My kids will probably take it, if I'm being honest. I bring home hats and they take them, and they love hats. Kids love anything.
As long as they don't have to pay for
broccoli.
Yeah.
They do not care for broccoli.
My kids like broccoli.
Well, that's rare because I was one of the few kids that liked broccoli too, but all right.
Yeah.
This is fun. I get to celebrate 10 while Peterson celebrates 5, and this is our first time potting together, and I get to be on with a fellow Atlanta Braves fan.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
There we go.
Now, I will say that our favorite Scooby-Doo villain will require that you take a picture in your hat for our Instagram page. So before your kids can swipe it, you're going to need to do that.
And just speaking of Atlanta references, this movie does have one Atlanta reference where she's looking for a rib joint. And she talks about Fat Matt's Rib Shack, which is a kind of an old Atlanta institution, maybe like 2 miles from Midtown Atlanta. It was good. It was good stuff.
Cool. I got to check that out next time I'm down there.
Me too.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
although it may be a while. I have usually no reasons to be in Atlanta.
I don't think you can anymore. Is it still open? No, it is still open. Yeah, it's still alive and kicking. It's been a while since I've been down to it.
I mean, to be fair, a lot of restaurants were taking it in the chin during the pandemic. So, I mean, it wouldn't have been that shocking had it been closed.
Yeah.
But in lieu of any new guest questions, because we have 2 5-timers on the show this evening with their own badges on the website, what are we drinking instead? I will start. I have water. I'm the weird one of the group.
I like to bring out the Scotch when I join G-Mote. I get inspired by Dana. The first time I was on, I was drinking like light beer, and he had the brown stuff, and I felt emasculated. So I have the Macallan 12 today. I break the good stuff out for G-Mote.
Oh, okay. Maybe next time that you're on, I'll have to break out the blue label.
Ooh, boy, for my 15.
I'm drinking at Sam Adams Oktoberfest. I've got a few left. Costco, which is, I mean, the place to buy beer because you get 30 packs and it's like 50 cents a beer. Few left. Trying to get through it before Christmas so I can get some Christmas beers, and yeah, I'm off tomorrow. So yeah.
What exactly is Christmas beer?
So I don't love any seasonal Christmas beer. There's a couple that I like, but I like a good kind of porter around Christmas time. I think Christmas morning beer, a good 10% porter that does you in until like noon. You're like, this is perfect.
Yeah, they're usually very like spice oriented and high in alcohol. I know Troegs Mad Elf is a popular one.
Yeah.
Delirium Noel is another popular one. They're usually like 11, 12%, and they kind of taste like a gingerbread cookie almost.
Yeah, nutmeg, gingerbread, all those kind of. I mean, I'm sure I think Prairie's got their Prairie Bomb, which is. God, it's like. I can't remember the flavors on that, but yeah, all those are. I mean, they're good Christmas beers. Just cozy up by a fire, your slippers, and.
I don't know how far Leinenkugels extends out into the regular U.S. Well, they make a pretty good pistachio porter, if you ask me. I'm not one for usually like these weird flavors and such, but that one I enjoy.
It's got a nice mellow flavor. It's not overly sweet. Stevens Point Brewery, which is a craft brewery, old brewery, but they changed it over to a craft about 20 years ago. They used to do St. Benedict's.
Yeah.
At
Christmas.
Yeah, of course. And St. Benedict's, and I talked with the brewmaster. I happened to run into him at a promo. They designed it to taste like Chimay, which, if you're not aware, is a monastic beer that's brewed in Belgium. And they did it around Christmas time. And that's where they put the beer into old wine casks. So it picks up the flavor of the wine, but it's like 12 proof.
Maybe that's why I thought it always had one of the worst aftertastes that I could remember.
I love it. So
you can have it.
It's been years since I've had a Chimay. It's been a long time since I've had a Chimay. But St. Benedict's, it's been probably 10 years for that too.
Well, I know, and it comes in like a wine bottle. You have to uncork it and everything, even though it's beer.
So good.
And for me, I decided to just downsize and just get a little bottle of
there it is.
Evan Williams.
Look at that. Talk about economy there. That's great.
Yeah, I probably will go through a large portion of this tonight, given the day I've had.
Tonight, for our 240th episode, we revisit the 2009 film Up in the Air, written and directed by Jason Reitman, with Sheldon Turner, music by Rolf Kent, starring George Clooney as Ryan Bingham, Vera Farmiga as Alex Goran, Anna Kendrick as Natalie Keener, Jason Bateman as Craig Gregory, Amy Morton as Kara Bingham, Melanie Linsky as Julie Bingham, Danny McBride as Jim Miller, Zach Galifianakis as Steve, J.K. Simmons as Bob, and Sam Elliott as Maynard Finch. Recognition for this movie, Up in the Air, was released on December 4th, 2009. On a budget of $25 million, Up in the Air would go on to gross over $166 million, finishing worldwide as the number 38 film of the year. It would be lauded by critics of the time, particularly for its writing, editing, and lead performances. The film would eventually receive 6 Oscar nominations for Best Picture, Director for Reitman, Actor for Clooney, Supporting Actors for both Farmiga and Kendrick, and Adapted Screenplay, winning none. In addition, the film was included on lists of the 10 best films of 2009 by Roger Ebert, the American Film Institute, and the New York Times. Up in the Air currently holds a 90% among critics on Rotten Tomatoes, an 83 score on Metacritic, and a 3.6 out of 5 on Letterboxd. So as we begin each week, Dad, what is your relationship to this film?
Saw the previews, really thought it was going to be good. Saw it in the theaters. I can't remember if the entire family went or if I just took Mom. I want to say you were along, but...
You would be correct.
Yeah.
I was there, and this was about the era where, especially coming out of the Ocean's films, because I remember seeing Ocean's 13 with you on like Father's Day weekend. That was like our dad movie, and of course, you and I both love that series. But this was about the era in time where anything Clooney was in, we were going to go see.
Sure.
And I probably knew almost nothing else about this film. when it popped up, I knew very little of who Anna Kendrick was very surprised, pleasantly surprised by her performance in this. I only knew Vera Farmiga from The Departed. So outside of that, this was just kind of fresh, new. I guess the only other person that I really knew anything about was Melanie Lynskey was on 2.5 Men. That was it. Kieran, what about you?
Yeah, this is one that I saw when it came out around Oscar season, when it was up for everything it was up for. It's one I've revisited since quite a few times. I even guested and covered on another podcast, and the Oscar Doesn't Go To was the name of the podcast. So this is a favorite of mine. This is one I revisit regularly. I just, every time I go back to it, I find something a little new with it, and it's fast and breezy, and it's a fun movie to introduce to people who haven't seen it, because it's usually a pretty solid crowd pleaser.
Peterson, what about you?
Yeah, so I know I saw this whatever day it opened in Atlanta, whether that's the 4th, maybe the 11th of December. I think they platformed this thing, so I think it came out the 11th in Atlanta. And my wife, well, now my wife, at that time we'd been dating for about 2 months. She went to everything with me at that point. We saw it in theaters, and I saw it at least twice, maybe 3 times in the theaters. Really responded to it, saw it 2 or 3 times in those first year or two that it came out. And I hadn't seen it for a little while, probably 6 or 7 years, seeing it this time, and was so pleasantly surprised that it holds up. One worry with this kind of movie being so dated to that post-recession era was that it was going to feel so dated. But, we're in a relatively similar time for some people economically. And this thing is just going to, every 8 to 10 years when we have these weird economic recessions, it'll feel so relevant, I think. So, yeah, so I saw this about as early as somebody could see it, and I've been a fan of it ever since.
I mean, I do think that the film hits a little bit harder during bad economic times, but I don't know. I think there's enough here about technology and loneliness that it suffices even in the, I guess, economic boom times, if you will.
If this was just tied to the recession, I think it'd be kind of an abysmal watch.
Yeah.
It's just like all of those Iraq war dramas that happened while we were still in Iraq. They feel they're so tied to that, 2004 to 2010 era, and none of them survived after it. So that was the only thing they were about. They're about a current problem. And this is, I think, about, yes, the recession is the backdrop, but, you could set this in any time frame, whether it's positive or negative economic times. And I think it still is going to play, because I think there's enough character dynamic and character development that this movie really buoys a pretty interesting cast and a pretty interesting story. And I think it's funny too.
So we've kind of stepped on it already, but what is the film actually about?
Well, it's about isolation, and it's about individuality and choices we make in our lives and what we seek out, but ultimately lack of connection and the inability to have human or emotional bonds.
Yeah, I think that's well said. This is a movie that is not about one specific thing for me. And it's one of the reasons that I really like to revisit it, because I think it's covering an interesting gamut thematically. One of the things that struck me this time is what it's saying to whether humanity is a pack animal or if we are individual animals, a shark versus a herd. And I think what the movie is trying to say, at least what I took out of it this time around, is that is not linear for every person. There are some people who thrive around others. There are others who are destined to or prefer to exist on their own path. And marriage makes sense for some people. Single life makes sense for others. A little mixture of both, maybe for some others. But I think it is an examination of the social self and how one adapts to to changing society. The world isn't going to be exactly as it is today, and how we adapt to it and how we set ourselves up for the future and react to what's happening in the present.
I don't want to completely step on classicness before we get to it, but I think this movie is aged beautifully in the sense that it's commenting on our relationship not only to other people, but how we relate to other people through technology. And that was one of the things that always drew me to the film is, I mean, there's the clever line, he broke up with you by text message, which for my generation seems pretty ordinary anymore. I've been broken up with by text message. But then he goes on, it's like firing people over the internet. And you get this really personal moment where you're like, oh shit, firing somebody, losing your job, especially in that moment. And I think a lot of people have had to transition in careers over the last 15 years or so, a lot due to either one recession or the other. And we've had to adapt to a lot of different work situations, especially in the last 5 years, where we've had more work from home and all these other changing paradigms. How we handle all of these things, where technology was supposed to bring us together and reduce some level of cost. And I think it's actually created more isolation.
You know, I think all of those points are true. One thing I do think the movie is about that hasn't been said yet is I think it's very much about realizing selfishness in yourself and seeing it in other people and how far that can stretch. So the Vera Farmiga character, she's incredibly selfish. Obviously, her family doesn't know what she's doing. But at the same time, you know, she's telling this lie to herself that, oh, that's my separate life, which, you know what? I'm sure there's plenty of road warriors like her that is true. And then for the Clooney character, it's so interesting because when he fires people, he does have a dignity to it. Like truly, like it is a craft to him. But at the same time, how much do you have to lie to yourself to be able to sit there and fire somebody every single day you go into the office? And not even one person. I mean, tons. I mean, it would be a soul-crushing job. I think the only way he gets any feeling out of it or any sense that what he's doing is for the greater good is if he does have to lie to himself. Even if he does it gracefully and can make somebody feel better about the situation, there's still a sense of anybody leaving that office is at least going to have 6 months of hardship. You know, that's why I think the J.K. Simmons scene is just, I mean, it's by far the best firing scene. There's no question. And he brings such an authenticity to it. So I think it's all about the lies you can tell yourself to kind of exist within your own world you've created for yourself.
I think there's one aspect of the film that when I first saw it kind of struck me as odd, and then watching it again and thinking about it, it's the stark reality of the backpack sitting there and you can only take so much stuff. And I realize that humans, in a large extent, you know, we talk about the sociopaths, the mass murderers, or the serial killers who take a trophy. And we as humans collect stuff almost as a trophy of the achievements, relationships, situations in our lives. For example, you know, when he talks about what are the valuable items that you would have, I have a harmonica my grandfather gave me when I was 7 years old. I never use it. I know where it is. I keep it in my the top dresser drawer, and it's there. But it's part of me. Why? It's a trophy. It represents a relationship that I cherish to this day. I don't use it, but yet I carry it along. And how many of us have those situations where we have some piece of item, or some trinket, some thing that we had obtained? It was a gift from a friend, a gift from our mother, something that we got at our graduation, whatever. And it has meaning to us that's beyond what we can express. And we collect this stuff. So when we talk about people being pack rats and all this stuff, in part, I think it's people expressing their historical timeline by items, and the fact that they have this stuff in their lives representing some relationship or some point in their life that they cherish.
Dad, did you remember to do the poll of the office staff on Monday?
Yes.
Okay, how many had heard of the film?
One, outside of your mother.
One? Really?
1 out of 24.
Dear God.
Sadly, I'm not surprised.
And this film is going to be 15 years old this week.
And it's the one person in the office who regularly listens to this podcast.
Yeah. So we have all clearly found a lot of depth within the frames of this movie. Why isn't this a more popular film among the general audience?
That's a good question. And this is Kieran, you were just on Rev Almanac talking about 1996. This to me is, I wouldn't say it's quite as good as this film, but this is a similar generational story to something like Jerry Maguire. And I think you'd be in the same boat if you asked a lot of people in today's climate, well, have you seen Jerry Maguire? Have you heard of Jerry Maguire? And some people might have heard of it, or if you say, show me the money, they might have heard of it. But it's the same. It's kind of a light drama, a lot of comedy. That movie was a box office sensation. Like this pretty much was, I mean, this isn't going to make nearly the amount of money it makes in 2009 it comes out now. This thing goes to Netflix or HBO Max or Paramount Plus. It's not going to get a theatrical release, which is also maybe the most depressing thing about our current cinematic landscape.
Tom, I mean, it's one of the reasons I was excited to be on for this episode is because this is kind of like one of those sad little cases. Like you said, we took a lot of depth out of it, the four of us. It's a funny movie. It's a charming movie. It's a smart movie. It's a well-written movie. It's a movie that was up for Best Picture, lead actor, very popular actors across the board in it, two of which became more genre-driven, you know, whether Anna Kendrick with the singing movies would have helped me out.
Pitch Perfect.
Pitch Perfect movies, right? And then Vera Farmiga.
Yeah, you definitely haven't had a girlfriend until recently, if you didn't know that.
Well, but also, I mean, Anna Kendrick is now directed a movie this year that she's getting soft talk for Best Actress and soft talk for Best Picture.
Yeah, I mean, and you got Clooney in there, who's a star. Yeah. So there is so many reasons for this should be something that should stand out. Even you have Reitman doing the Ghostbusters movies now. But for whatever reason, this thing has just kind of gone a bit forgotten. You know, it is still on streaming. It's been on streaming. I mean, we're going to talk about, we're going to hash this out in the rubric a little later. But you know, it is a little bit of a curious case.
I mean, this will make one Andrew Korn's really proud, but I even dug out my physical DVD of Up in the Air this week.
Very nice.
So not even a Blu-ray.
Nope.
Yeah, you know, I do think part of the lasting legacy of this movie, not being quite as known today, is that it has a lot of depth, but it's still a bit of a confection. Like, it's still very light. It's funny, but I don't know. It's boggling to me why this isn't more popular.
In part, it's like exercise. We know it's good for us. We know that it will benefit us. We know that we can get great ramifications from spending time doing it or watching it. But the thought of just sitting through this when it seems to be on a bunch of unpleasant things, isolation, termination, bad economy, it just doesn't make us want to go, ooh, let's spend the night watching.
Let's watch Clooney axe people for 2 hours.
Yeah. And that's the problem.
I will say too, you know, it does seem that sometimes these like Oscar bridesmaid comedies for Best Picture do tend to kind of be in the moment and then here and then gone. Whether it's Juno, another Reitman movie,
Little Miss Sunshine.
You mentioned Jerry Maguire, Peterson. The Accidental Tourist. There's a lot of like these movies that are up for Best Picture that don't quite win it all. And then we just kind of lose sight of them. I don't know why that is, but it does seem to be a little bit of a trend.
Don't worry. In about 20 years, those of us that are still alive will be watching it on TMC or TCM, excuse me.
I think the way this movie might come back into the consciousness in some way is TikTok. And I hate saying that. And I want to cut my vocal cords out for saying that, but imagine watching the credit card scene where they're sitting there, credit cards on TikTok. Everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, what movie is that? I'll watch that thing." I think it could take like one or two of those scenes that people see and they're like, "Oh, that looks like a little fun movie. Let me toss it on the list."
I don't know.
Maybe not, but I don't know.
This does comment on the status of where movies are at, because these types of movies are not being made now. Not even on Netflix, and really not on Max or any place else. They're not even being just like thrown up on a streaming service. These are being turned into really crappy Netflix like miniseries or stuff that we're gonna eventually spin off with 3 other characters.
So I think the closest to this year was My Old Ass, which if you haven't seen it, it's wonderful. It's a really good kind of light dramedy. But I mean, that thing, I bet it was made for like $5 million. It's got Aubrey Plaza. She's by far the biggest name.
Yeah.
And that thing, I don't think it played at all in theaters, which is sad.
What about A Real Pain with Eisenberg and Culkin? That feels like, I didn't see it yet, but that feels like it could be in the same.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I think Culkin's destined now to get a nomination for Best Supporting Actor.
Mm-hmm.
He's not just destined to get a nomination. He is the front runner for Best Supporting right now.
Tom, I told you this 3 or 4 weeks ago. Denzel Washington is going to walk in there and rip that thing. I mean, everybody wants to see him. And actually, my wife, kids, and I maybe going to New York City in like 6 months. 4 months for spring break. And Denzel's the guy I'm like, I gotta, he's in Othello with Jake Gyllenhaal. Gotta see him on Broadway. Other person who kind of tempted me a little bit was Clooney, who is in Good Night and Good Luck on Broadway at the same time.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you just hit Dana's love language there.
But yeah.
I love that film.
My wife and I were going to escape for one night. We're going to go see one thing, and then we're going to take our kids to 3 or 4 other shows. But
cool.
Yeah.
Is Clooney doing the same role as he did in the film, or is he playing Morrow?
I think he's playing Morrow.
Yeah.
I think he's playing Edward R. Murrow now. Yeah.
I want to throw out there too, we did have American Fiction last year, and I know when he won screenplay, Ford Jefferson hopped up and said kind of what Tom was saying. We need to make more of these mid-range movies and give people chances to tell this kind of story.
Make $20 million instead of $200 million.
Yeah. All right, so let's give some more background on the movie. Dad, do you have a plot summary ready for us?
I do. Ryan Bingham, George Clooney, is a corporate downsizer who spends most of his life traveling for work, reveling in the freedom of a rootless existence. Obsessed with achieving a coveted 10 million mile frequent flyer goal, Ryan avoids emotional entanglements and personal commitments. However, his carefully constructed life is disrupted by a young efficiency expert, Natalie Keener, Anna Kendrick, proposes a cost-cutting plan that could ground his lifestyle. Simultaneously, Ryan begins an unexpected relationship with fellow traveler Alex Goran, Vera Farmiga, forcing him to confront the emptiness of his transient life. Up in the Air is a poignant exploration of connection, loneliness, and the value of relationships in a disconnected world.
Thank you. Did you know? A large number of the people we see fired in the film are not actors, but people who were recently laid off. The filmmakers put out ads in St. Louis and Detroit, posing as a documentary crew looking to document the effect of the recession. When people showed up, they were instructed to treat the camera like the person who fired them and respond as they did, or use the opportunity to say what they wish they had said. A way to discern who are the actors and who are the real people is that the real people do not have dialogue with George Clooney or Anna Kendrick, as they were shot separately. Jason Reitman did this intentionally, feeling that the real people would freak out Clooney and Kendrick. Did you know? Vera Farmiga used a body double for her nude scene. In an interview, she stated she had no problem with being naked in a film, but she had recently given birth, and, quote, the breast milk running down would have been inappropriate.
That is a thirsty scene.
Got milk?
Did you know? When Bob shows Ryan a photo of his 2 children, it is an actual photo of J.K. Simmons' real children. Did you know? George Clooney's wardrobe for the entire movie actually fits in one carry-on suitcase.
Makes sense.
Did you know? When Alex is at the Atlanta airport, she asks Ryan if he knows a good place for ribs. Ryan tells her to go to Fat Matt's, a real rib shack on Piedmont Avenue. Jason Reitman is a big fan of the restaurant. In return, owners Matt and Kelly Harper presented Reitman with a card entitling him to a lifetime of ribs.
Ooh, that's a big gift.
It is. And with that, we will take our first break, and we will be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, next week for our 241st episode, we welcome our newest celebrity guests, Ralph Esparza and Michael Willoughby, to discuss a Paul Thomas Anderson staple, Magnolia, from 1999, celebrating its 25th anniversary, written and directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, music by John Bryan, starring Tom Cruise, Philip Baker Hall, Philip Seymour Hoffman, William H. Macy, Julianne Moore, and Jason Robards. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you.
That's REELGOOD.
And just to confirm, yet again, I have yet to see the movie. I've been waiting. It will be on my weekend watch. Let's just say I have yet to find a Paul Thomas Anderson movie that I really understand or connect with.
You're talking about it, man. I mean, we did a whole PTA Wes Anderson series on War Starts at Midnight. Chris loves Wes Anderson. I'm kind of, some of it's okay. Some of it I can leave at the door. PTA is one of my guys. I love PTA. Love Magnolia. At a point in time, I probably would have called it my favorite movie. That was a younger version of me. Now it's like my 5th favorite Paul Thomas Anderson.
Don't get us started on Wes Anderson, because Kieran's coming back for our Rushmore pod.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, I'd sooner go to Rushmore than Foot.
Have you seen Rushmore, Kieran?
Yes, I have.
Okay. That is one, to me, if you don't like the Wes Anderson aesthetic, that to me is one of the ones that is probably a little more tolerable.
Yeah, I found it intolerable, but that's just me, maybe. I do like Magnolia, though. I'm interested to see how you like that, Tom, because that movie's out there. I mean, it's a lot. There's a ton of fun performances in it, though. So I'm interested to see what you think. Just make sure you have a lot of time sectioned off for it, because it's a lengthy flick.
Yeah, 180 minutes, probably 200 minutes, probably 3 hours and 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Ouch.
And if you do need to stop it, there's literally like music cues that tell you like, okay, this is a good time to take a little break, because it is a heavy movie, very, very heavy. I love it though; it's a wonderful film.
And for the angry listeners out there, I do appreciate Tenenbaums and Budapest, Grand Budapest Hotel. I do like those two.
The only thing I know about it is the raining frogs at the end. That's all I know. Outside of that, I have no freaking clue what I'm getting myself into. But that's the beauty of this show. We have 2 people that are coming on that I think absolutely love the movie, and I don't think my dad or I have seen it yet. It's going to be an adventure.
I'll say it should have been Tom Cruise's 2nd Oscar win.
Agreed.
He should have won for Jerry Maguire, which, I mean, I'll say, truly love Jerry Maguire. An absolute masterpiece. When you do the 30 year for Jerry Maguire, I'm here.
Okay. I would say, I don't know if I would go with him as my best actor for that year, because I think there are a couple of really good performances from 1996, especially listening to the recent episode from the previously mentioned Revisionist Almanac. But if I were to give him one before Magnolia, it would have to be Rain Man over Dustin Hoffman.
Not Far and Away?
No.
Days of Thunder?
Maybe A Few Good Men in 1992, but, you know.
He's good in Few Good Men.
He dials it up, but it's strategic. Anyway, before we move too much farther, you already mentioned your show, Peterson, but what's going on with you and where can people find you?
Yeah, so working on a couple pieces for psychodriving.com, working on a piece on Wicked. It's kind of the box office sensation, which I knew was going to do well. I didn't know it was going to do quite as well as it did. Kind of a movie musical that I'll say I love the first half of. I think the Act 1 of Wicked's incredible, and Act 2 is not quite as not as many bangers in the second half of Wicked as there are in part 1. It's be interesting to see what happens in a year. But working on that, and then got a couple of articles about to publish there, and yeah, last one here for the season too.
Yeah, Dana and I both enjoyed Wicked, having almost no knowledge of it going into the theater, so I will also be curious for part 2, only because I don't know what happens in the end. Although it I have to assume it leads into The Wizard of Oz. So
yeah, I loved Wicked. So
my girlfriend's a Wicked super fan, so I believe I'm getting dragged there at some point next week. So we'll see how it goes. I know nothing about the story whatsoever.
You'll enjoy it simply because it's a very enjoyable little thing.
Don't put those impressions or expectations on him. Just let him find out for himself. We went into it, at least I did, thinking, this will be okay. And I was very much impressed. But that's my opinion. So
I will say it's got one of the most kind of earworm Broadway musical numbers in the history of the medium. And it ends part 1 on a real banger. Okay. I was like, really like fist pump walking out of the theater. I was so excited.
Yeah, it definitely ends on a great note. But Mr. B, what's going on with you and where can people find you?
People can find me over at Best Picture Cast. We cover all of the Best Picture winners in various different methods and orders. We do long form, so we're basically dedicating 3 hours to each winner in whatever order we see fit. We are approaching our 6th season coming up. We're ending the year with just some different kind of specials. We have a Christmas special on It's a Wonderful Life coming up, which I think will be out this same week that this drops. And we'll have like kind of a year-end special too. But we're kicking off 2025 with our 6th season. Our first movie we're doing in that will be No Country for Old Men. I believe we'll be covering Forrest Gump after that. And we'll be celebrating our 5th anniversary with the first winner, Wings. So those are our first 3 Best Picture winners we're covering for season 6 next year.
What is your longest episode, Kieran?
Our longest episode on a film is
it's got to be the 2-parter
Rocky.
On Lawrence, right?
If you count the 2, right? If you add the 2 parts together, then yeah. But we kind of treated them like 2 separate episodes. But yeah, it would definitely be Lawrence. We probably have a good 6 hours or so. But I think the Rocky episode over 4 hours.
So Lawrence of Arabia is truly a Netflix limited series.
Right. It pretty much is, yes. So yeah, we do the long form there. Now I think Rocky was like our 8th episode, so we got a little out of control. So that's kind of been the marker, like don't go longer than Rocky. But yeah, we hash it out. You know, this is our one shot to talk about terms of endearment. We're gonna get everything out on the table.
Good movie.
So the Rocky episode was longer than the fight with Apollo Creed?
Oh yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
I think probably both fights. You had them together.
To be fair, I think any of the rankings specials are probably longer than Rocky. But yeah, we did out of necessity.
We ranked our first 45 movies covered, and that I believe is the longest running episode on the actual feed. we were recording for like 7 hours that day. We cut it down the best we could, but yeah, half my cohorts were ready to kill me at the end of that thing.
I wonder. So just curious, because it seems like sometimes RDB doesn't quite make it to the end of these episodes. Did he make it to the end of Rocky?
He was not on the Rocky episode, but my brother was, and he barely made it to the end. But yes, Artie is known to vanish into thin air sometimes. You'll notice that he's just all of a sudden he's gone. So I think at our last rankings, he actually physically fell asleep. Yeah.
I have not been on a podcast with him. I have not talked with him. I just have seen him or, listened to him. And he reminds me of Artie from Howard Stern's show so much that I'm just going, well, yeah, okay.
That's amazing. I'll definitely pass that along. He'll appreciate that.
Oh, okay. Now, we have not had you on since you asked a supplementary Ask Dana Anything question. I will say we are planning on a live commentary watch of Juror number 2 with Dana coming up. So that is one thing. But the other one is you said you wanted him to do a live reaction show of Megalopolis, and we will plan on doing that.
I got an invite today for a local theater in Atlanta to go to a live Q&A with Coppola himself discussing Megalopolis, and I couldn't be more disinterested. Which I will eventually see that movie, but I don't know.
I would love to see Dana just comment along with that thing. That's something special. Now, for Juror number 2, are you going to comment as you're watching it for the first time, or are you going to watch it
Correct.
and then do a comment? Okay, wow. All right.
No, we're going to do it live with the commentary as best as we can. It may be a live tweet thing because I don't know how we're going to do the whole camera thing.
Makes sense, right? Makes sense.
But either way, you guys can enjoy that on December 20th because I think we were challenged that specific people out in the movie ether wanted our specific feedback for the film. And that's when I guess it comes up on Max is December 20th.
I believe so, yes.
So it's time for everyone's favorite segment. That's right. It's time for Ask Dana Anything. We do not have any listener submissions. So unless our guests have something ready for us, we can move on.
I have one, or it's a 2-part question related to the film we're covering. Dana, what is the longest flight that you've ever been on? And if you could fly somewhere direct for a vacation, anywhere in the world that you've never been, where would you go?
Okay, the longest flight I ever was on was flying from Chicago to Tokyo. Because we were on our way to Bangkok. My daughter was an exchange student, and we were going to see her. And that was the part, flying for what I felt like ever. Landing in Tokyo and going, I'm so glad the major part of this. And then realizing Bangkok was like 9 hours from Tokyo yet. Yeah. So that was miserable.
How long Chicago to Tokyo?
I don't want to say it was like 16 hours or something like that.
Boy.
I mean, it was just terrible. And of course I couldn't, I tried to sleep through part of it and couldn't. And so it was just nasty.
I'm not somebody who can sleep on a plane. I can't do it.
Yeah.
I have a hard time.
I don't understand how people can.
I can sleep about any place at this point in time. It's kind of my superpower as an old man. I just can't sleep when I really need to, like at night. But, like in the middle of the day, I can just lay back in my chair and sleep for 20 minutes. But, yes. And as far as where I would love to go, I have a minor in Russian history. And I really have always fantasized about either Moscow or St. Petersburg.
Very cool.
Although going to Australia would be cool. It's another place that I've always thought would be interesting to go. And where I wouldn't have to rely on anybody else to tell me what they said, as long as I could convince them to talk slowly.
I'm still not sure that's 100% true. And second, for as slowly as we both move, that is one place where we are going to die immediately.
What, Australia?
Damn straight, Skippy.
Okay.
You're going out in the bush, you're going to get, I mean, Australia's got the crazy animals.
Well, thank you,
I
Kieran,
guess.
for those questions. And any further questions that we have for this evening?
I've got a little bit of a two-parter here for Dana. It's gonna be centered upon the law. I'm curious. Our two female leads. One, I'd say, is probably 23. Is Anna Kendrick is like
That's what it sounds
the
like.
age.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I think Farmiga says she's like 38, 36, something like that.
Maybe a little older, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
She was 36 when she filmed it, so I thought, but yeah, maybe she's playing a little bit older.
It sounded like they were suggesting the character was 38.
Okay. So, of our two female leads, who would you rather be representing you in a trial, and who would be the better lawyer intoxicated? Because we see them both a little tipsy.
Kendrick. And it's because of this, which is the passion about everything. Farmiga's character was much more dispassionate, more analytical. And when you're in a trial, you want the passion. I mean, I tend to be rather analytical and calculated, except when I'm in a trial. It's like playing a part in a play. And you have to try to present yourself in a way that's in passion. And I used to ham it up. I'd put my armor on my client, no matter how mean, nasty, disgusting he was, to try to present that I felt strongly about his defense. I would make comments and then laugh like he said something funny. And it was a part. It's that element of feeling, or the jury wants the attorney to believe in them. If the jury is dispassionate about a defense, the jury is going to go, yeah, whatever. It's just a bunch of legality, a bunch of, nothing. They want somebody who's going to be right there thumping on the table going, my guy is not guilty. And so Kendrick presents that much more to me.
You going to answer the second half of his question?
Which is?
Intoxicated, who's the better lawyer?
Oh, intoxicated. Farmiga, because she's more fun.
Fun is a factor in choosing a lawyer?
There are a lot of lawyers around who their careers are made by who they know or who they met at a bar. And so your ability to be jovial in a situation where there's copious amounts of alcohol involved does provide opportunities for some lawyers.
All right.
So,
well, thank you, gentlemen, for your questions on that. I hope that he gave satisfactory answers to your burning questions. But let's move back into our regular programming. We left off at best performance. Dad, who did you have down?
I have Clooney. There's just so much of this film that he carries the heavy water.
I would tend to agree. I think, and maybe this is going out on a bit of a limb, especially given that most people don't know of or have not really seen this film, but I think this is arguably Clooney's best acting performance that I've seen. The scene where she comes in for the first time and is firing Ned, his facial acting as his just disgust comes together, I think is some of his best performance I've ever seen. No,
I mean, I'm gonna agree. It's Clooney for me, and I think it's pretty easy just to see if Clooney's born 70 years earlier or 40 years earlier, however many years earlier, he's truly a capital M movie star. And, he is a star now, but he has an old Hollywood feel to him that movie stars today just don't have. And I think that's, to me, this is like It Happened One Night or Bring It Baby, like one of these true classic rom-coms from the early stages of film that had that rat-a-tat dialogue. And I think Clooney's so adept with the dialogue. And then you have him delivering the backpack monologue, and all the charisma drains. He's not selling it at all, but he can sell those intimate scenes so well. And he's, purposefully, I think, modulating that performance really well. And he's so funny in this. This is a funny movie. So I think Clooney's the easy answer.
It's not going to be a clean sweep. I have Vera Farmiga as my best performer. I've always been enraptured with this performance here. To me, this is a Hitchcockian performance out of her. The Hitchcockian blonde that comes into this thing, seduces the audience along with the lead, and really just completely pulls the trapdoor out from underneath you as you're watching this thing. You think that the hero, quote unquote, in the film has found a counterpart out there in the universe, someone that he can align his philosophy and beliefs with, just to find out that it's all a ruse, and it completely turns this movie on its head and makes all of its wonderful themes more vibrant and more layered. And I think Vera Farmiga just sings in this role. I thought she should have won the Oscar for supporting actress there. In my opinion, I don't think the Monique win ages very well. I know it was pretty unanimous back then. I think people still may look back on it fondly, but to me, this should have been a win for her. And I really appreciate the actress, and this performance is the best of her career, and to me, the best in the film.
Curious, do you guys think there's a bad performance in this movie?
No. The closest one might be maybe his sister, his older sister, who's
you think
like,
so?
It's not bad. It's the closest to bad. It's touch and go at moments, but I think she delivers one of the funniest lines of the movie at the same time.
I don't think it's not going to happen because there's too many other good performances, but she was close to making like one of my secondary performances here. I think Amy Morton's so good in this.
Cool.
That scene where they're in the hallway and she's talking about having to move out of the house, and you can tell she is in a horrible space, and he passes right by it. He's just like, oh man, you're moving out. Bummer.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, that's just, to me, was the closest. But to me, there's not a bad performance in this movie.
I'll give you 3 that I think are at least questionable. 1, Ned, who was being fired. He really hams that in. Okay, maybe that was intentional, but he does a very poor job of being fired. You should be a lot more emotional and try and show off for the bosses if you're going to be able to do
that. Feels like a business meeting, though.
2, the music in this is, it's not bad, but it's okay. It's fair at best.
That's a weak link for me.
3, I will give you Jason Bateman. He's okay.
Oh, come on.
Oh, he's so sleazy.
I think he's perfectly cast in that role.
Oh, yeah.
And I think it may be the worst he's ever looked on screen. His haircut and his beard just looks terrible. He's got the suspenders. I'm like, he looks awful. And he hadn't taken a shit in 2 weeks when we first meet him.
We're back in the air, buddy. It's so, to me, he's perfectly cast in that.
Yeah. I love that moment where they're in the movie and he's like, you can sail on sail. He goes, we'll send you a postcard if we, or send us a postcard if you ever feel like it. He's just like, go do your thing.
Perfect casting for Jason Bateman will always be Pepper Brooks, but outside of that, I'll look for other solutions. Pepper needs new shorts.
Well, and I'll get to this, but my most indelible moment is still J.K. Simmons, whose only name in the film is Bob, and to him, he was the part. I hadn't seen this film again, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is the part where J.K. Simmons gets fired and he says he can't dunk. That's the part that was the most memorable of the film to me. So when you've got a guy who has a few lines and makes that much of an impression in the film, in the middle of it with a star-studded film, there's a lot of good acting going on.
The only time I've seen J.K. Simmons be bad and it was not his fault is Justice League. That one, I will admit, he was taking a paycheck, and even then, he wasn't necessarily bad. It was just everything around him was so bad that he was weighed down by it. But anyway.
He makes a great yellow M&M.
He's not the yellow M&M anymore. He hasn't been for a while.
Oh, I thought he still was.
Oh, no. For like a decade, he's been off of that.
I don't think so.
Yes, I know so. You want to make another gamble here, Pop? You need to eat some more pickles? Anyway, best secondary performance, I have Jason Reitman, primarily for the writing of the screenplay. I think that there is a lot of really great dialogue. I think that the premise is simple, but it has a lot of depth and heart to it. And it explores a lot of different relationships for Clooney's character, while also, as we've mentioned, being really pithy and fun. So for something that dives into this many topics to be that level of fun and dialogue heavy, which has always been a favorite of mine to begin with, coming from more of a theater background to start anyway, I give it to him.
Tom, are you saying Reitman the director, Reitman the writer, or Reitman both?
I'll give it to him for all of it because I usually don't separate out. But if I were to put it on one particular factor, I would say screenplay. Direction-wise, I don't think that this is anything particularly special. Like, can I pick out one of his movies comparatively to some of his contemporaries? No, not necessarily. But I think he does a solid job with what's there.
Yeah, no, I mean, to me, this is like Rob Reiner.
Yeah.
Peak Rob Reiner. It's that kind of run that Reitman went on for, I don't know, 5 years, and then I don't know what happened. I truly don't know what happened to the man.
I don't know. Dad liked Saturday Night. I haven't seen it yet. And
I've heard Saturday Night's good, but he made 2 Ghostbusters movies. Labor Day.
The first Ghostbusters that was coming back, whatever it was. I didn't see Frozen Empire or whatever the fuck that was. But the first one I thought was decent.
Yeah, I thought Afterlife was good. I was happy with that. I saw that in theaters and was.
Yeah, I did too.
It's worth it. It's totally worth watching.
Maybe I'll toss it on.
Yeah, I can't speak to Frozen Empire, but Afterlife is totally worth watching, and the emotional beats hit in that film.
Maybe I'm being a little too harsh because after this movie, he makes Tully, he makes Young Adult, which are 2 movies I love.
It certainly seemed from Juno to this, he was on an ascent to the top tier of directing, and that just kind of didn't happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I enjoyed Thank You for Smoking, but that's kind of a weird film that not a lot of people have probably seen. It's the only other one where I can easily say Aaron Eckhart was in a film.
Yeah.
Eesh.
Anyway, other best secondary performances.
I'm at Reitman.
For me, it's Anna Kendrick. I thought she was outstanding in this. The perfect contrast to Clooney in this thing. The younger, up-and-coming, studied, studious entry into the workforce versus the old salty veteran. Someone there to shut him down as he tries to mansplain things. And it's a really kind of wonderfully controlled performance out of her. She builds up to that explosion where she drops her luggage and bursts into tears, and I crack up laughing every single time. He broke up with me. It's a fun performance. It's a well-earned Oscar nomination. I had Anna Kendrick as my secondary.
Yeah,
I'm glad that you stated it that way. A older grizzled veteran teaching the younger one the ropes, because I was going to save this for later in the show. But how are we doing on the Christmas swap Bull Durham?
I'll watch it. I'll get it in there.
Okay,
I'll get it in there. I
mean, you still have to exchange and give us, movies since we gave this one to you. But
that's right. Yes, I got to get you one.
My best secondary is Reitman. I'm going to go with the Duncan boys here. I think he does a beautiful job directing this. I think this thing is so well paced. There is not an ounce of fat on it. It's like an hour 42. And think about the economy of how much is being done in the script, the direction. I love this. Is truly, I watched this and I was like, man, this guy really is like one of the next greats, isn't he? He's like the next Woody Allen type or something like that. Yeah, so I think he does a wonderful job directing this film and writing it.
Still a young man, still plenty of time to go.
Yeah, he's still young. He is still young. He's got plenty of time to make, 10, 20 more movies. So I'm not ruling the guy out. And I do really want to see Saturday Night.
All right, let's move to most charismatic. Anybody want to go first?
I'll go first, and it's Clooney for me, for sure. I mean, his charm is electric in this thing. He totally makes the movie work, and he makes it work through his charm. I'm just in love with the three principal actors and the combination of the three of them in this, that I had to recognize each of the three, and this was how I was able to parse it out. Clooney's charisma is undeniable in this. We get to see him run the gamut throughout this thing of confidence, of insecurity, to where it lands him in the end, looking up at the board, and however you interpret that. And I would agree with you, Tom. I think this is his best performance. I can't think of a Clooney performance that I don't like. I really like him in a lot of things. To me, it's this and The Descendants probably as his best too. I would lean toward this being his best performance.
Yeah, I'd probably put Out of Sight on that list as well. He's great in Out of Sight. Clooney's an actor I love. I think part of the reason he's never really given a bad performance is because he doesn't take a lot of big swings as an actor. Mm-hmm. And he's not ever going to end up in a role that you're like, oh man, he's just, like, what's he doing here? So I think that works for him. I'll say my most charismatic is Anna Kendrick. I think she is just electric in this movie. She's so funny. She's sincere, heartfelt, captures being, 22, 23-year-old kid who's like just out of college. The world is at their feet and they know absolutely nothing about it. Like, they're like, oh, I'm here to capture this place. And they get into the real world and they're like, oh, this is a lot more cutthroat and cynical place than I assumed it was. Any three of these actors, though, I'd put on, any one of them could be here. They're all incredible in this. It's tough to leave Farmiga out of this three. So I'm just going to shout that out and say she could easily be here as well.
So when I saw this film, I had a infatuation with Anna Kendrick as well. And I couldn't understand exactly why. And it lasted for quite a while. And then I watched it again this time, and I realized why. She's a lot of false bravado, very insecure, and tried to overcome her insecurities by overflating her capabilities and what she could accomplish.
Thank goodness the person that you're meaning here does not listen to this show.
And I realized that she exemplified the very woman I married.
I knew where you were going with that.
Yeah. It dawned on me as I'm watching it again going, oh my God, that's why. That's everything about her that I thought was just absolutely precious and why I wanted to marry her to begin with, because she had no clue that somebody could see through her as much as I did. And so I'm just like, okay, I'm happy. Now I'm thinking of this and I'm going, that nuanced character really exemplifies a lot of talented, intelligent women who lack the ability to be self-confident in situations. And so she's my most charismatic as a result. She portrayed that dichotomy brilliantly.
All right, let's go to best scene then. I have 5 nominees here. Who Are You? So the opening kind of narration over the top of Zach Galifianakis being a sniper. Then I have Grounded, which is the meeting where he comes into Omaha, obviously the first exchange, him kind of meeting Natalie for the first time. And you can even take that up through the Fire Me scenes. Then I have Tricks of the Airport. So always get behind the Asians. Then Natalie's first firings, and I have Talking to Jim. So out of these, did I hit everything, or do you have some additional ones you'd like to nominate?
I got at least two more.
Okay.
It is the swapping of the credit cards, kind of them, measuring each other in the bar. I think that's such a great screwball comedy moment where it's all coded sexual language. I think it's perfect. They're sizing each other up, and it's just written beautifully, performed so well. And then the other is J.K. Simmons is firing.
Did you have the reveal at the house too on there
with Farmiga's kids?
Yeah.
No, I don't have that on here.
Okay, I would add that.
You should have that on there.
That's a great moment. It's just favorite moment just because it sucks.
Well, it floored me when I saw it the first time because I had never thought about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That moment's brutal.
Yeah.
All right. So for these, then we have Who Are You? Membership cards, Grounded, Tricks of the Airport, Bob's firing, Natalie's first firings, Talking to Jim, and Alex's family. Out of these, what is the best scene?
There's like two or three I can pick. I think I'm going to go with the J.K. Simmons scene. Personally, I think it's just a wonderful moment of the movie. J.K. Simmons performs it so well, and it gets to the heart of why Clooney is good at what he does. As kind of soul-crushing as that work probably is, he took the time to look at the guy's resume before sitting down with him, which is something that Andy Kendrick has not done. Realized that he's got a passion for French cuisine, French cooking, I think.
Yep.
We do at culinary school for. And he makes him feel a little bit better about it. Obviously, it's a funny scene, but it is a genuine moment from a guy who's kind of disingenuous in parts of this movie.
Oh, it is so hard. I mean, probably one of the hardest that I've been on for, just because there's such a rhythm to this movie that every little moment is like a little gold star as this thing keeps going through, and there's just little shining parts of this thing that stand out. So my favorite scene is going to change every time I watch the movie, so I'll give you where it's at now. Indelibles, obviously, I'm firm on. And favorite is just hard to select. I'm going to go with the conversation with Jim, his sister talking him into giving him the pep talk, aren't you a motivational speaker? That into him with the Velveteen Rabbit. And to me, I think that's the movie. The movie kind of it deceivingly tells you what you think it's about a few times. But I think that this is the moment where it might be fully revealing itself. So I'm going to reluctantly say that scene for now, but I could be swayed, and the next time I see it, I might feel a different way.
Kieran, with that scene, one thing is when he talks about the Velveteen Rabbit, and he holds it up, and it's a book that I read as a kid. But when he's like, "Oh, it's powerful stuff," I was like, "Oh, he's just making like some cheeky joke." But if you've read the Velveteen Rabbit recently,
it's very sad.
It's about what Scarlet Fever gets him the bunny, and now he can't have his bunny anymore. It's like this traumatic kid's book, and it does have maybe the funniest line of the movie when he's like, "Yeah, I tell people to avoid their commitments," and she's like, "What kind of fucked up shit is that?"
That gets me every time. Yeah.
I'm going to go with Tricks of the Airport just to be different because there's just a lot of humor in those scenes. I mean, I agree with Kieran that it's tough to nail down like one specific moment that really hammers home the entire movie because it's a sequence of things, but I'll just go with that one to be a little bit different and nominate some other stuff.
Again, this is a situation that strikes me at the moment in my life. And films, you can play a film and what impacts you now, 10 years from now is going to impact you differently. Right now, I'm in a position where I don't remember being a young lawyer and kind of sloughing through life and how court appearances and all this. And it's Natalie's first firings to me because it just brought back how that you kind of chuckle and I'm not going to comment about present company included, is seeing them kind of go through their little rites of passage of doing the things that are they're in their professions that they're going to have to do. And you kind of chuckle. I'm in the position now where I'm training multiples to take over the next level of legalese and doing hearings and trials and all that stuff. And just kind of watching and going how they're struggling to try to find their little way of doing things. And I kind of chuckle and go, yeah, okay, a little much.
I think that moment also shows that she just doesn't have the stomach for this.
It's not that. It's literally you don't know what you're quite doing and you're trying to get your footing.
Yeah.
That's it. Okay.
It's the difference between science and art, where science is you're going to have a pre-made script, but art is where you've memorized the script and you can start going off book and doing variations on it.
Like today, you interrupt your client in the middle of his testimony and you go, none of that makes any sense. Where you go, it started before that, didn't it? Well, maybe. And then you start going a completely different tactic and you completely flip the testimony from being what's going to be a losing case to the judge going, yeah. So to me, it's Natalie's firings because he's just sitting there going, you really have no clue what you're trying to do. And he's kind of almost laughing about.
Favorite scenes. Kieran apparently already has his picked out.
Yeah, my favorite scene is Peterson's best scene, the J.K. Simmons firing. This one really hit me this time. I welled up, and it really hit home. So that was my favorite scene this time around.
To me, it's tough for the favorite scene because I think the quality of each scene of this movie, it's like slight gradations of quality. It's one of the most consistent movies to watch scene to scene, I think, the last like 20 years. It may not have the highs of some movies, but it has, I think, zero lows. To me, I think my favorite, it might be that first, I think it is the moment where Natalie's just gotten broken up with, and they're like, oh, how about a drink? She's like, now you're talking. And then it just starts the night, and it's like, oh, like they're getting to like cut loose and have fun. And then it ends with the very funny moment where Clooney's like, oh, so did you walk out or did you say bye? And she's just like, he knows what I did. I love that like 7 to 10 minutes. I think it's wonderful.
Favorite scene to me is Who Are You? And let me just pose this question or this thought. You're at a dinner party and it's a group of people that you have either not met or that you're now entering into a new business relationship. And all of a sudden there's just a timeout. Some guy comes in as the narrator and he describes the entire circumstances of this person's life and how they've achieved or where they got to at this point in time. And it reveals everything you need to know and opens up the whole situation so you can understand their psychology and what's going on and how life would be so much easier and how you might enjoy your dinner party so much more if you had some idea of where this person is coming from. And to me, that's what Who Are You is. It's that reveal and having that opportunity to know somebody so intimately that you can get beyond the parry and a thrust of conversation and have the opportunity to meet or go into a much deeper level of communication and relationship with people at a very early time frame.
You and I got very different things out of that scene because I don't think you're describing anything of what's going on in that scene at all.
He's describing exactly who he is, what he is, why he got there.
Okay, so it's an exposition dump.
Okay, but to me, that says so much. It built you a relationship with him right off the bat.
Okay, but then that doesn't relate to anything else of what you were going on about.
No, but it does, because if somebody else is doing that at a party or whatever.
Oh, yes, I walk into a party and the hot blonde in the corner is somebody I'm relating to because I can hear her narration above her head.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, I'm going to go with Grounded, partially because, again, Clooney's facial acting, and I think it's a very funny scene where he's asking her to fire him, and then he knows all the pitfalls of exactly how to press certain buttons, things that she can't do by firing over a computer. Well, let me go talk to my boss. He's the only one that can fire me. You can't follow me, not through a computer screen.
It is good.
Most indelible moment, Alex's family for me.
Same here. Yeah, that's the twist. That's the one that sticks in my bones. With this is the first thing I think of when I think about.
I mean, if it were a secondary choice, it's going back to your high school in northern Wisconsin. But other than that,
to me, that's my indelible moment is the high school scene where he is truly beginning to open and crack in a way that we haven't seen him yet. It just truly makes the turn in our discovery of her kind of secret life that much more brutal, is because he has now opened himself up in a way that, and then outside of the high school, they're like dancing together and they feel and seem like a couple.
Yeah. And in that high school scene, if you squint really, really hard, you can see Dana throwing shot put in the background from his old days at that, because that's a Wisconsin school there, right?
I don't think it is, but
it's not actually. I looked it up.
Supposed to be. Okay.
But it looks very similar to one of the schools Tom played against in basketball. Grisham? It looks a lot like the Grisham
I don't know
High School.
if it looked all that much like Grisham.
Well, it's one of the schools. And I actually had to look it up to see if maybe it was one of those schools that they filmed it there, but no.
It looked closer to like Bowler for me, but
maybe that's what I'm thinking. It just looked like one of those. So
yeah, one of those very tiny schools that's has a very, very wide school district in order to maintain a certain level of studentry.
Yeah, they don't describe where in Wisconsin or northern Wisconsin that is. And for most people, anything north of Madison is northern Wisconsin. And quite frankly, that's only about the first or the bottom third of the state. So,
yeah, northern Wisconsin is above I-29. That's it.
Yeah.
To me, that looked more like Merrill, Wisconsin than it did like, I'm trying to think, Delafield.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Wisconsin in February.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's better than Wisconsin in January.
Or, well, right now, December with 40-mile-an-hour wind gusts.
That's true. But that looks like a good spot for our second break. We will be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, and before we get to the Stanley Rubric in a minute, if you're ever curious about our master greatest movies of all time list that has every graded movie we've ever discussed on the show, there's a link in the episode description of every episode of this show. Or you can go to RonnieDuncanStudios.com/Gmode podcast and find it as the top entry on the greatest movie of all time podcast show page. That is the grades we've done so far for all 216 movies we've graded, and we continue to add more each week. Make sure to check that out as we go and follow along. Dad, do we have anyone to remember this week?
Yes. Marshall Brickman, 85, American screenwriter. Annie Hall, Manhattan, playwright, Jersey Boys. Oscar winner, 1978.
I have to assume that was for co-writing Annie Hall then.
Yes. Wayne Northrup, 77, American actor. Dynasty, Days of Our Lives, Port Charles. Bob Breyer, 44, American drummer. My Chemical Romance. Morgan Lofting, 84, American voice actress. G.I. Joe, Spider-Man. Nels Arstrup, 75, French actor. The Beat That My Heart Skipped, A Prophet, and Warhorse. and Adam Sumner, 57, American film producer and assistant director. Licorice Pizza, Blitz, and West Side Story.
So I want to clarify that the two voiceover actress works were both television animated shows, G.I. Joe and Spider-Man, not Spider-Man. I don't have a whole lot to add either here, but just a lot of people that I was not particularly familiar with, but glad that we are once again recognizing them for their work and unfortunately on their passing, but at least they get a moment of recognition even from a show as small as us. So,
I will say, I just want to say Neil Zarstrap, the three movies that were listed, A Prophet, The Beat My Heart Skipped, those are both Jock Odiard films, wonderful French films. And then I do really like Spielberg's 2012 film War Horse. I think he's great in that sequence. The little French girl, not so much, but he's really good. The Neil Zarstrap, yeah, really good little French actor.
And so we recognize these here with a moment of silence in their honor. Thank you. Let's go to best funniest lines. I will start with one of the obvious ones, but never get behind people traveling with infants. I've never seen a stroller collapse in less than 20 minutes. Old people are worse. Their bodies are littered with hidden metal, and they never seem to appreciate how little time they have left. Bingo, Asians. They pack light, travel efficiently, and they have a thing for slip-on shoes. Gotta love them.
Kara Bingham. Jim's got cold feet. Talk to him. Ryan Bingham. You want me to talk to him? Kara. It's either you or me, and you know my track record. I've already struck out once. Ryan. I've never been up to bat. I haven't even been in the dugout. Kara. Don't you talk for a living? Motivational kind of stuff? Ryan. I tell people how to avoid commitment. Kara. What kind of fucked up message is that?
Natalie Keener. So they don't actually ever do it. Ryan Bingham? No. It's just talk. Natalie Keener. How do you know? Do you follow up? Ryan Bingham. I mean, no. Nothing good's going to come of that.
I love that. Is one of my favorite lines. It's so
funny
good.
as shit.
So, no, don't do that.
Ryan Bingham. You know that moment when you look into someone's eyes and you can feel them staring into your soul and the whole world goes quiet just for a second? Natalie. Yes. Ryan. Right. Well, I don't. Natalie. You're an asshole.
Ryan Bingham. If you think about it, your favorite memories, the most important moments in your life. Were you alone?
Ryan Bingham. Last year, I spent 322 days on the road, which means I had to spend 43 miserable days at home.
Natalie Keener. Tests have shown that children under moderate trauma tend to apply themselves academically as a method of coping. Bob. Go fuck yourself. That's what my kids will think. Ryan Bingham. Your kids' admiration is important to you? Bob. Yeah, of course. Ryan Bingham. I doubt they ever admired you. Bob. Hey, asshole. Aren't you supposed to be consoling me? Ryan Bingham. I'm not a shrink. I'm a wake-up call. I see guys who work at the same company their entire lives. Guys who are exactly like you. They clock in, they clock out, and they never have a moment of happiness. You have an opportunity. This is a rebirth. If not for you, do it for your children.
Ryan. Walking past Middle Eastern passengers at a security checkpoint. 5 words. Randomly selected for additional screening.
Natalie Keener. You're so pretty. You're exactly what I want to look like in 15 years.
Alex Goran. We all fall for pricks. Pricks are spontaneous. They're unpredictable, and they're fun. And then we're surprised when they turn out to be pricks.
Natalie Keener. Okay, what are we doing? Ryan Bingham. We're here to make limbo tolerable, to ferry wounded souls across the river of dread until the point where hope is dimly visible, and then stop the boat, shove them in the water, and make them swim.
Dad?
I'm out.
Okay. Ryan Bingham. How much did they pay you to give up on your dreams? Bob. $27,000 a year. Ryan Bingham. At what point were you going to stop and go back to what made you happy?
Natalie Keener. Please, for the love of God, can I fire the next one?
Bob. Well, I can't dunk.
Ryan Bingham. Starting when I was 12, we moved each one of my grandparents into a nursing facility. My parents went the same way. Make no mistake, we all die alone. Now, those cult members in San Diego with the sneakers and the Kool-Aid, they didn't die alone. I'm just saying there are options.
Ryan Bingham. Tonight, most people will be welcomed home by jumping dogs and squealing kids, and thousands more will ask about their day, and tonight they'll sleep. The stars will wheel forth from their daytime hiding places, and one of those lights, slightly brighter than the rest, will be my wingtop passing over.
Natalie Keener. Fear of mortality. It's like, yeah, you're going to die one day. Ryan Bingham. Why do you think that's singular to men? Natalie Keener. Probably because you can't have babies. Ryan Bingham. The baby argument.
All right. I have definitely said this to more than one of my coworkers over the last decade. Are you angry at your computer? I type with purpose.
Good one. That's a good one. Ryan Bingham. I thought I was part of your life. Alex Goran. I thought we signed up for the same thing. I thought our relationship was perfectly clear. You're an escape. You're a break from our normal lives. You're a parentheses. Ryan. I'm a parentheses?
Ryan Bingham. I don't know what originally sparked the backpack. I probably needed to be alone recently. I've been thinking about emptying the backpack or put everything back in it.
I'm out.
This is my last one. Ryan Bingham. Life's better with company.
I've got a couple more, but we can end there. I go. This whole movie's like a quote.
Peterson just brought the script with him.
Yeah, flip to page 30, line 7.
Chapter and verse. All right, then let's move to the Stanley rubric, because I have a feeling this is going to take a bit. Legacy is up first. This is a measurement of the legacy of the film exactly 5 years after it came out, so roughly 2014 to today. What is the legacy of this film? We split this category between the audience at large and the industry, 5 and 5 for a total of 10. Dad, would you like to go first or second?
I'll go first. Industry. I think that this kind of helped. I mean, after the Twilight films, Anna Kendrick kind of became more bankable as a result of this film. So I give that a little bit of juice for the industry. I think it continued Jason Reitman's trajectory as a director for a while. So I went with the industry as a 4. This film is forgotten. Nobody talks about it. It really does not have a lot of impact. As I indicated, the informal poll, which I don't rely on hugely, but kind of does exemplify a lot of common themes within our general culture because of the nature and at least socioeconomic diversity of my office. I'm at a 1.5 for the public because it really, nobody talks about it. Nobody thinks about it. So I'm at a 5.5 for Legacy.
I'd like to go next because I have the exact same score as Dana. I had 4 for the industry. I'll just tack on to that. You have Jason Bateman growing after this quite a bit in, the Ozarks and producing The Outsider, and his stock has grown. Reitman with the Ghostbusters movies. You have Vera Farmiga with the Conjuring films. She goes off in her genre run there. Anna Kendrick, of course, you said Pitch Perfect before. I'm not going to get it wrong twice. Yeah, the Twilight films. And it's George Clooney, and probably George Clooney's best. So I think they're all the prospects. And not to mention J.K. Simmons goes on to win an Oscar as well. So I had 4 for the industry, and everything that Dana said, it's kind of been a bit forgotten. I thought a 1 might have been a little harsh because it is on streaming regularly. So you can find it and you can access it, and there's chance for it to have a second life. But I think a 1.5 is more than fair. I have a 5.5.
So I'm going to probably be the low man on this then, because as far as the industry, you're catching all of these people in the middle of their primes. Like, this is not necessarily... George Clooney is clearly like an A-list person by the time he gets to this. Vera Farmiga had somewhat established herself at least a bit by this point. Yes, maybe she was supposed to go off and do some other things, but I don't think that she was like an unknown person. And Anna Kendrick, while somewhat starting, at least was at least a bit known. She wasn't getting an Oscar nomination before this. This is her first one, but it's not like this was her first movie either. And so I think for the main principal people in this, you're catching them all in the middle rather than helping promote them or prop them up a little bit further.
This is the beginning for Kendrick.
Yeah, and this is Vera Farmiga's Oscar nomination. She parlays this into The Conjuring. And, they both take this and run with it. I mean, to me, this is their growth and run. Clooney that's a fair enough argument. And I think Bateman, too.
I think the only one that you can argue is right at the precipice of what they were going to become is Zach Galifianakis.
6 months earlier, he was in Hangover, though.
I understand, but he filmed this before The Hangover came out, and he became like, oh, that's Zach Galifianakis.
Yeah, but nobody was going to see this for Galifianakis.
No, of course not. I'm not even saying that. I'm just throwing out there that he's the only one to me that like no one had known when this was filming.
I think Farmiga's filmography after this is way more massive than it is before this. She's in The Departed before this, but she's not in much else. What she does beyond this totally dwarfs what she did before this. And Kendrick is the same thing.
Either way, I don't feel there are a lot of industry people talking about this movie. It's not revisited a lot. It's mostly forgotten even by the industry professionals. And frankly, I think probably the people who were in it or made the movie haven't really talked about this a ton. This is something that because the audience fervor wasn't there, it did well in its moment, but it's basically become an afterthought. And as such, I only have this at a 1.5 for the industry. The audience, I have a 2, because I do think it is propped up a little bit by the film bros who at least have seen and have a recollection of the movie, but I don't think this has sunk in with the general audience at all. So I only have a 3 point. Yeah, I only have a 3.5.
That's brutal. So for me, I'm going to go industry the exact same as Dana and Kieran. I'm going to go 4. I said this is probably my favorite performance, Clooney. I lied. That's Michael Clayton. He rules in Michael Clayton. He's so good. But this, to me, is one of the last big Clooney performances before he basically becomes Mr. Casamigos and then sells that for $1 billion and moves to Italy.
He's got Descendants
2 years later. But
that's an Oscar nom, and that's a great performance.
Oh, yeah, not denying that. But this is like one of the last big moments for Clooney before he's, now he has works when he wants to work.
The delineation point is Monuments Men. The minute that came out, then his career was basically over.
I mean, look, it's not over. It's not over. I mean,
name me the Clooney movie in the last 9 years.
You know what, though?
Anybody
you do this.
Ticket to Paradise, Midnight Sky.
You do this, and then in 2028 he wins Best Actor. I mean, look at Adrian Brody. He's going to win this year. Everyone talks about he won the youngest winner ever. He's never, and then what has he done since? He's in Predators, and he's in the. He's going to win. He's going to be a 2-time Oscar winner in March.
No, but so you got Clooney, kind of one of the last true moments I think of him being mega star George Clooney. And then you've got Kendrick and Farmiga right at the beginning of them being what they are now. Kendrick's parlayed herself into having a really interesting career. Pitch Perfect movies are great. Those are fun. I shouldn't say great. At least the first one's fun.
Super successful.
Very successful. Pitch Perfect 2 has what Austin Powers 2 has, which is the sequel makes more than the first movie does in its entirety in its first weekend. So you got the two of them, J.K. Simmons, and I think, I think you still hear people talking about this, is people wanting and craving this kind of movie. Where for years we've been like, why can't we get Jennifer Lawrence this kind of movie? Why can't we get this person this kind of movie? I think this movie is going to come back at some point. I say it's the TikTok thing. That's how the youth find their movies, which is insane, but I think it's going to happen. So I think a 4 in the industry. I'm going to be a little higher in the public just because people who've seen it, it's well liked, well remembered. I'm going to go 2 for the public. So not much higher than you guys, but I think 2 for public is about as high as I can go right now. So yeah, 2.
So to be honest, that was a 6 overall for you, just
Correct,
adding everything up, but you didn't say that. But
No.
so it's a 5.13
Oof.
average between the 4 of us.
Cold-blooded. That is cold-blooded.
All right. Impact and significance. This is a measure of the impact and significance at the moment the film came out and for roughly the 5 years after it came out. So 2009 to 2014. What is the impact and significance of this film? We also divide this category 5 and 5 between the industry and the audience at large. I will start on this one. I think this was a much bigger thing in the moment for the industry, not to mention just the Oscar attention, but also to promote a couple of stars in that time period. Again, giving them a certain level of success. You want to stack movies on movies. And while both of them had some films to that point, you have to give them a little bit of credit that they didn't have like a giant flop in the middle of this. Although I don't know if this could have been really labeled a flop since there were not many expectations for this film when it probably came out. That being said, I give that about a 3.5 overall. It was nominated for 6 Academy Awards, but I still don't think that the further out you get, even a year, 2 years, 3 years later, that people were necessarily thinking about this movie in the way that the 4 of us were. On an audience impact side of it, though, this had a fairly modest budget, but had a fairly good box office draw comparative to its overall budget. So I do think there was an audience for this movie, but I just don't know how large that was. So I'm going to go a 3.5, thinking that most, if not all, of the film fans that watch all the Best Picture nominees probably saw this at the time, but it probably didn't pierce the general public sphere overall in order to get it just a little bit higher. So I have a 7.
Okay, I will go next. I'm pretty much in agreement with everything Tom said. I do want to emphasize, though, that this was heavily favored to win screenplay, adapted screenplay. It was a shock victory when it lost. So this is one that, like, you could look back on it as one that should have won an Oscar. It probably didn't come close in any of the other categories it was in, but the win for Precious won for screenplay. And that was like a shock because it had the precursors, it had swept Up in the Air, had swept all of the screenplay precursors. I have it at a 4 with the industry there based on that. It was kind of up until the Oscars, a consensus screenplay winner. I thought it was pretty well respected in there. It seemed like Reitman had graduated from Juno to now this, and maybe he was going to move on to be the next thing. That didn't necessarily come to fruition in the fullest Oscar-y sense. And I have the same score as Tom with a 3.5 for the audience. I was actually pretty shocked when Tom read off the box office numbers. I didn't think it did that well. So I'm just going a 0.5 higher on industry from Tom. So I have a 7.5 total.
Pretty close to lockstep to you guys. I mean, this industry-wise, I think, is in the moment pretty heralded. Everyone loved this thing. Made so many critics top 10s, won Critic Circle prizes left and right. And then it made that boatload of money, which I didn't look up the budget. I'm assuming somewhere around 20-25 million for this. So it did incredibly well. I think the thing that keeps this from being a little bit higher on that legacy side is it is so American. I mean, this is an American story more than any other. So I think it would be a little bit higher if it had some kind of international appeal. So I'm going to go 4 right there. Impact, that is an interesting one because it launches Farmiga and Kendrick, who are still with us, still doing plenty of work. Anna Kendrick's one of those people who is now pretty well known outside of just being an actress. She had that song, was it Cups?
Yeah.
Cups.
Whatever.
Yes.
Yeah. huge. I mean, that song was ubiquitous for what, like 6 to 9 months? It was everywhere.
Yeah.
She broke out. Farmiga obviously has the Conjuring series. She's great in that. She gets the show Bates Motel, which is some trashy fun. I watched that whole thing. It is trashy as all get out, but it is very fun.
Wasn't she also an American Horror Story for at least like one season?
Her younger sister has been a reoccurring character.
Tasia Farmiga, yeah.
Yes, was Vera in a season?
I've never seen it, so I don't know. But also about 3 years after this, Farmiga directs a movie as well, which her sister is one of the stars of. Higher Ground. Really well regarded. So I think you don't have the careers for Farmiga and Kendrick without this movie. I think, Clooney's fine. I think this bumps his star, but nobody else I don't think really gets a rise out of this. So I think 4 is, to me, impact-wise, a nice, solid score for that. So I think 8 combined.
And Dad, before you go, just let me respond. This movie made almost identical money domestically as it did internationally. And given the prevalence with which air travel is much more commonplace to go from different countries constantly for especially business travelers in Europe comparatively to the United States, where cars are a little bit more common, I find this actually has a lot more international appeal, even though it is Anglo or American centric.
I just want to throw out there too, Anna Kendrick's Cups went number 6 on the hot Billboard 100 charts. So it got as high as number 6 and did reach number 1 on the U.S. adult contemporary charts for Billboard. So was certainly a hit.
For me, industry, I have a 4.5. I think that critics love the film. I think within the few years, as I indicated before, I think that Anna Kendrick kind of cemented herself as more than just the Twilight films. It would have been real easy for Hollywood to just pass her off as being kind of teen pop actress. This kind of carried her beyond that. From the public, I have a 3. 32nd in box office for the year. Not huge, but solid for a relatively modest budget film. So I'm at an 8. Or no, 7.5, excuse me.
I was going to say, you were about to fuck with my number because conveniently I thought you had a 7.5, but all right. Yeah, okay. So that's a 7.5 average between the 4 of us. All right, let's move to Novelty then. This is a measurement of the originality of the idea and the execution on that idea. We split the category again here, 5 and 5. Who would like to start?
I can start. So I think novelty-wise, it's kind of interesting because the idea of this movie is, I think, pretty unique. The fact that you're going to cast somebody like George Clooney, who's an inherently likable star, and his job is to go fire people. So I think it's a funny concept, and it ties into, I've already said, the Jerry Maguires of the world, movies like that are about people in business that have a crisis of conscience, essentially, and it's taking a pretty unique spin on that. So I'm going to say novelty-wise, 4. Well, on the story side. Now, execution side, as much as I love most of this, it's a well-shot movie, but there's nothing, I would say, extra special about it. There's nothing that makes me think, well, look at that shot. Look at this moment. It's a perfectly situated camera, but nothing's flashy. Perfect for the story. And I think editing is where I think this movie really succeeds from a craft perspective between those two. So I'm going to go 3.5 on that portion. So 7.5.
So I agree with you, Peterson, that I believe this is somewhat unicorn-like. I don't think that it's like a full 5 on that department, because this is reminiscent of a lot of like mid-tier adult dramedy type of films that we probably were more commonplace in like the 90s or maybe even early 2000s. But I don't think that because it fits in a particular window of genre that it should be held against. You made a dramedy out of a guy who fires people in the middle of the pandemic. I don't think there's a whole lot.
Recession.
Excuse me. Yeah, you're right. The recession. I don't think there were a whole lot of people taking swings like this right at that time. And maybe it was just good timing on his part, because I'm sure he got the funding and got stuff together to try and do this movie before Lehman Brothers collapsed. But even so, sometimes things just happen at the exact right time when they're supposed to.
I doubt it, because Juno became the huge hit it was, 2007.
Right.
And
he already had this script written. This was supposed to be his original first movie. And he sat on it for the other 2 movies, Thank You for Smoking and Juno, and then had this in the pipeline. And it just happened to work out. Part of my research.
It's an adaptation of the novel, too. So
the Walter Kern, right?
Yeah, right here.
Oh, okay. But even so, I think this still has enough unicorn qualities for me that I'm going to go with 4. And I would mirror a lot of the similar comments at execution. I think that the parts that really work for me are the casting, the particular acting performances out of the leads, as we've all mentioned, the script writing, and maybe to a degree the editing, but I don't think that there's anything particularly special about this. So I kind of give it about the same. I'm at a 3.5 on that. I have a 7.5 as well.
All right. I've been doing a little thinking here, but I kind of like what both of you said.
That might be dangerous there, Kieran.
Seriously. The 4 makes sense on the first half there for me. I'll say 2 areas that hurt this thing from a technical standpoint. Tom, you mentioned the music. The music is very stock. You feel, and maybe that's not a bad thing for an airport movie. Maybe that's what he's going for. Probably not. That feels like a stretch, maybe. But.
So the composer on this film, Ralph Kent, also did the music for Sideways.
Okay, which I love the music in Sideways.
And I think the music's pretty similar. It's just a little more upbeat and jazzy in that.
Yeah, the jazz factor makes Sideways, though.
It's a little more subdued here. Like, I don't think it detracts from the movie, if that makes sense. I still think it adds much.
They're also using songs from the same artist here in this.
I like the acoustic stuff in this. I like that music.
It feels a little stock to me. The other thing is the cinematography is lacking in this thing. It feels like like they're shooting an episode of The Office at times. But I agree with you, Peterson. The editing kind of saves that a bit. So I've been bouncing back and forth between the 3 and the 3.5 there, but I like the movie, so I'll lean up to a 3.5. So I'll agree with you guys for a 7.5.
Now, before we get to Dad here, just because it was brought up what movies that Ralph Kent has also worked on, this guy has a rather eclectic career. He's worked on Stan and Ollie, Vampire Academy, Downsizing, The Men Who Stare at Goats, Mr. Popper's Penguins, Young Adult, Up in the Air, Ghosts of Girlfriends Past, Failure to Launch, Thank You for Smoking, Wedding Crashers, About Schmidt, Legally Blonde 2, Freaky Friday, the Jamie Lee Curtis version, Election, Legally Blonde, the first one, 40 Days and 40 Nights. So, I mean...
So he's on all the Alexander Payne movies and he's work for hire.
Jason Reitman, Alexander Payne,
and
those are 2 big ones. I mean,
and whoever's filming a random Jennifer Garner rom-com.
It was more Matthew McConaughey rom-coms, to be honest. Failure to Launch and Ghosts of Girlfriends Past, but yeah.
I mean, look, he scored some mediocre movies. I'm sure he's got a nice boat that
he's out there working, man. He's out there working. Yep. I couldn't score a film, so
No.
Okay.
All right, Dad, go ahead.
All right, Novelty.
Wait, what'd you end up at, Tom?
I think all three of us had 7.5.
We have 7.5 across the board so far.
Yeah.
So Dad's going to fuck with the average.
Of course I am. Originality. I mean, it's talking about things that are very 21st century. Isolation in a world of social media, internet communication. So I'm at a 4.5 for originality. And as far as execution goes, I'm a little higher than you guys because I thought it was well executed. I thought it was the timing, the pacing, the presentation. There wasn't a point in the movie where it dragged or, I think it took the concept and passed it through. It was a presentation of multi-generations and how they're dealing with technology, communications, personalities, and relationships. And so I went with a 4. So I'm at a 8.5.
I'm going to be a real asshole here. I'm going to bump it up because of you, Dana.
Nice.
Damn it.
Love that.
I'm going to bump up my first score to a 4.5 on originality. I was about to get mad, Dana. I thought you were going the other way, saying internet and all these things with timelessness or with originality. I thought you were going to be like, this is not original at all. You made me want to bump it up a little bit.
Love it.
Fuck all of you.
Well, no,
All
it's an 8 because you guys had 7.5s and we had an 8.5. Or no, you had an 8. Never mind.
Yeah, you went from a decently clean number to now whatever the fuck this is going to be. And I had my perfect math already done. Now we're at a 7.88.
Repeating? Love it.
No. Rounded.
I think that was Frankie Montaz's playoff ERA, right?
Yeah.
Sure. Let's go to classicness, our most difficult to define category, usually having to do with whether something has aged well or not, and that can mean a lot of different things. Dad, you normally start off this category for us.
I always started as 7, as we've talked about multiple times, because of the fact you can go down more than you can go up. This film is, you could release it today. It would be as poignant now as it was 15 years ago. So I've got to give that at least a 1.5 up. And I found nothing that was really derogatory, problematic, any problems with the relationships. In fact, the fact that he broke up with her by text is more prevalent or more classic now than it was when it happened 15 years ago. So I'm at a 9.
I will say ditto, except I have an 8.5.
I want to say, because Tom and Peterson, you guys both brought this up very, very early in the podcast, almost in like the first opening of this thing. This, to me, is the best. This movie is the best kind of dated. It's dated in a good way. It's showing the transition in technology in society and from where we were then to where we are now and where we're going. To think that a company introducing the idea of Zooming your job and it's shocking the chorus. And we know 10 years later that through 2020, the majority of the world would be doing their job remotely. We see the BlackBerries and how we'd see that transition and breaking up over text, which becomes part of the culture. This isn't a movie where someone 10 years from now will look back and say, oh my God, they were doing that back then. They would look back and say, oh, this is what it felt like when technology was transitioning. And those are important films because this movie wasn't trying to do that. It was trying to say something along the lines of technology, but it wasn't trying to be a time capsule that it is. And I think that's very important. I can't give it a 10 because to me, a 10 is like a little bit sacred ground in the world of classic. I don't want to go there, but there are no points off on this movie at all. Even when they're kind of being a little racially sensitive, the movie is a bit self-aware and comments on that aspect of it. I'm going to go with a 9.5 in this one, which is a high score, I know, but I can't give it a 10, and I'm not close to a 10, but a 9.5, I'll give it a little boost there.
The one thing I will say as far as the racial profiling, having Middle Eastern or Arabic looking people pulled out of the airport security isn't as big a thing in 2024 as it was in 2009, but it is funny to those of us that lived through 9/11 and Iraq and kind of the fervor of all of our own insecurities and fear of that time. But
yeah. But we're dealing with that in other areas, and we don't
sure. I'm not saying it's gone away or it's died down completely.
We haven't gone on enough wild tangents tonight. Let's get into it.
You're left, Peterson.
Classicness. It's interesting to think about that because I think classic is it to me or is it to everyone? Because obviously the public, this movie is kind of non-existent, right? And it's not popular in that regard. But I think if anybody does see it, people respond to this movie. I mean, it's enjoyable. It's funny. It takes itself just seriously enough, I think, which is important. This is, the old adage is your movie needs to have 3 good scenes and no bad scenes. This movie is kind of all good scenes and no bad scenes.
Yes.
Which to me is about as enjoyable as you can get to watch. Like, I'm not going to lose points on it for not having kind of 5 great scenes, I would say. There's like 4 or 5 scenes that I think are really good. Maybe not great scenes, but they're right there. And I think as this movie ages, Kieran kind of said it's dated in the right ways. But I think the themes of it are so universal that it outdates that, if that makes sense. It's all about isolation, loneliness. These things aren't going anywhere. So to me, you combine those 2 things. This is a 9.5.
Had to fuck with the average.
Yep.
So we have a 9.13 between the 4 of us. And I have been at worst tied as the low man on every category. And I like this movie.
Someone's got to do the dirty work.
Wow. Tamping down expectations, I guess. All right, rewatchability. This is the most subjective category that we have. And we have had a lot of people insert their own personal tests. I think Dana has devised about 17 of them himself.
What was the banana or the pickle test, right? The pickle test.
Yeah, the pickle test. There was the can I make my wife run out of the room screaming test. There was the mac and cheese soul food comfort test. I think Peterson was the if I'm just out of the shower in the hotel room, am I going to dry myself off or am I going to sit down and watch this? There have been so many different tests. But because the most often one used on the show is named after one of our participants this evening, I will let Mr. Kieran B. start.
All right. Yes, the first test, the original test, as far as this category goes. So this category has kind of become like the model of subjectivity for the show, which I appreciate. So I will let bias sink in a little bit here, where I might have been tamed back a little bit. This is one of my favorite movies. This would be on the short list of favorite movies for me. It wouldn't quite make like a top 10, but it would be discussed on a fringe. There's no way I'm turning it off if it's on. Like if I'm just flicking around and this is on a Tubi or a Pluto and it's just streaming, I'm any single point of this has got me. And this is absolutely something that I will put on and will revisit from time to time. Always speaks to me in a different way. Those are my favorite types of movies where how I viewed this in 2014 with my girlfriend back then versus how I view it now with my girlfriend today, or when I was single in between, or wherever it is. It is a movie that can speak to you in different ways. And on top of that, I think it has a Teflon air of recommendability to this thing. And I think that's important too, where you like to watch someone watch it. The old Shawshank, if they've never seen it, the rock going through the poster and their mind being blown. Spoiler alerts. But it's a 10. This is a 10 for me. I will absolutely be so excited the next time that this comes up to watch. And I'm not turning it off, and I'm putting it on at least semi-yearly.
All right. Would someone else like to follow that? Or
Yeah, I can. Let's add another test.
I like pickles too.
So the test I'm thinking of here is that this is the kind of movie my dad and stepmom would love. They'd watch this. And I can imagine being over my dad's house, Falcons game is on, I don't know, the golf tournament's on, whatever it is, whatever sport he's watching. And my dad, he wouldn't admit this, but he's ADHD. He's got a mind like me that's a million different places at once. And
what?
If a commercial's on the football game, he's going to flip it to the other channel. And I'm like, how long would my dad watch the movie? Would he wait till the commercial break? Would he flip back? And I think that Teflon, would you call it Teflon recommend? Kieran?
Your recommendability.
Yeah, recommendability, like Teflon recommendability. I could recommend this to literally anybody I would ever meet. It is pretty close to a 4-quadrant movie. The only reason it's not for like 8-year-olds is, I don't know, there's a little bit of sex, but I mean, my kid's 10, 12 years old. I wouldn't be like afraid to show them this, I don't think.
Might be a bit high concept for an 8-year-old.
Yeah, they may not latch onto that, but there's nothing about this that is going to offend anybody, which I think is nice, but
unless you just got laid off, that might be a trigger warning. But
and personally, I think this movie starts and I don't love the opening like minute of narration. I think I can kind of do without it. But once people are like in this, every scene's fun. I'm with Kieran. It's a 10 on rewatchability. It's just an absolute blast to put this thing on and spend some time with your buddies.
For putting it on, this is one that I probably go a couple of years in between. I'm always glad to go back to it. So I will have a fairly high leaving it on score of a 4. It's not one that I'm absolutely going to stop my day at all times to like go back and watch, or making plans to return and watch it. Or I think Kieran at one point said during Shawshank, this is the one you'd interrupt your wedding day with. No, there is almost no film that I am interrupting my wedding day for, but maybe one day I'll find that film. But I think that's a reasonable 4. But as far as my impetus to put it on, just because I have such a hard time rewatching certain things, and there are certain comfort movies I will go back to, but my gradations on these are much more refined. I had it at a 2.5. I have a 6.5.
If I'll rewatch a film.
This is a film that I can't believe why I didn't go back to it sooner.
Didn't say that.
Not yet, but it's coming.
So that would generally be a 6. It's a film I would recommend, and I would sit and watch with somebody else while they're watching it and enjoy them watching it, because I think it would have an impact. It's not a film that I find to be a comfort film that I will just throw on for any given moment in time. I am going to go with a 6 point. Second. I'm going to go with a 6.19. What?
I love it.
No.
Turn that last screw on him.
Nope. You're going with a 6.
He's vetoing it.
That's how it's being entered.
6.19.
6.2.
Fuck you.
I love it. I love turning that last screw.
Nope. It's going in the book as a 6.
All right. Well, 6.25.
No. It's either 6.5 or it's a 6.
6.5 then.
Amazing.
Fine. Thank you for that. You just... So the average here will be an 8.25 for rewatchability. For audience score on this one, we had a 7.25, where we averaged between the Google score of 66% and a 79% among Rotten Tomato users. Anyway, to repeat the categories, we had a 5.13 for legacy. For impact and significance, we had a 7.5. For novelty, we had a 7.88. For classicness, we had a 9.13. For rewatchability, we had an 8.25. And for an audience score, we had a 7.25, giving us a final total of 45.14, and currently placing it on our list, tied with Anatomy of a Murder at 129.
And what bookends that?
So the ones right in front and behind, Back to the Future is one ahead, and Gaslight is one behind. For what it's worth, this film does place higher on our Gmote list than Fight Club.
There we go. Didn't get as spicy and saucy as Fight Club. God, that was a great episode. Oh boy, I loved it.
Can't imagine things getting too spicy or saucy up in the air.
As usual, if you have any complaints about our scoring or placing on the overall list, you can write us at greatestaltimemoviepodcast@gmail.com, or you can find us on any of our socials at Gmote Podcast, or you can write us at the website RonnieDuncanStudios.com/Gmote Podcast. Let's move into remaining questions. What is Natalie's job 5 or 10 years on?
Out of work placement.
So
she's now placing people who are out of work.
Oh, okay. Good answer. Good answer. Oh, so they never say what the company she's joining does, right?
No, not that I could tell.
Yeah. I think she's wildly successful with whatever she's doing.
I think it's something to do with, because he does mention like the exact opposite, something with like human rights or something, I don't know, like for the betterment of people, if that makes sense.
I suppose I could see a nonprofit, but I think she has a little too much ambition to try and like be.
Well, I think that yeah.
Non-placements are kind of kumbaya. Let's all sit around and.
I could see her much more in a headhunter role and placing people that way, as opposed to like working at a job center.
Yeah, I think she'd be something like a startup, like a ground level of a startup. And
I think she sticks in this job that she gets. I think she turns into a corporate job, but I think she finds the right person and marries and has kids and lives in San Francisco, and has a great life for herself. I think she's a really good person who gained a ton of perspective through her experience working with Ryan Bingham.
She could be at a tech startup, because being in San Francisco, being from her background, you had mentioned Ivy League previously. This would have been about the right time that she could have been on the initial starting team for like Uber.
Yeah. Silicon Valley and all that. Yeah. Good call.
Special assistant to Steve Jobs.
She was on startup.
When did Steve Jobs pass away?
He 2012, right?
Okay, so it would have been like just before that, but okay.
Yeah.
Maybe she could work with Mark Zuckerberg then.
Maybe it's just me projecting on this, but my next question, does Ryan stay at his job? Because there's a part of me that really thinks he's kind of fed up with firing people by the end of this movie.
Okay, so I just want to say first, Tom, if you ever had any doubts, I do read your emails. I read them fully and prepare properly. So I just want.
I saw this question as well.
I love this question, and this really made me think. And I rewound and watched that last scene of him at the board probably 3 or 4 times just to kind of get the beats of it, because I do think they're doing a lot of storytelling through quick cuts and filmmaking, or through shots. And we see him. He approaches the board. He looks up at the board, which is fulfilling what Natalie had said earlier in the movie, where if I had that many miles, I just go to the airport, look up at the board, pick a place and go. He looks up Then he lets go of the baggage and looks down and then looks straight forward as he's giving the final monologue. So to me, what I took of that, and it's certainly left up to interpretation, but what I took out of that is that he looks up to find a place to go because he doesn't have a home. There's no here. There's no roots. So he's looking for a place to go, and he sees all these spots. And in his mind, he says, I don't think going somewhere is for me. I don't think that's my destiny. My destiny's here at the airport. My destiny is up in the air. It's travel. It's bouncing around. But I don't think I need to be what I was. I have a new perspective. I knew where I want to go, but I'm going to find that by being who I am. And I'm going to find that by traveling the world and going about the places. And he doesn't give away all his miles. He gives about 500,000 of his miles away. So he's keeping the lifestyle. I think he keeps the job initially is what my takeaway from the movie is that he continues to do the job. I don't think he'll do the job forever. I think this is the beginning of him looking for something new, but he's going to look for something new by traveling the world and living in a almost like a nomad lifestyle in the air. The long way to answer your question is that I do think he continues to do the work, but I don't think that is his destiny. And I think he will find it in his travels.
I certainly didn't think it was the short way to answer that question, but two, I assume everybody reads the emails, and unless you give me an indication that you don't, like, why wouldn't you read my great emails providing you all of this information and try and help you prepare? But okay.
My point is that it's a tremendous amount of work, and anytime that you do that much work, you probably have a shade of doubt saying these fucking guys better be reading these emails. That's all I'm saying.
I'm sure there are people that don't read all the way to the bottom and just do it off the cuff as we're going. But, okay, fine. I try and provide you a little bit of prep in advance so that you can anticipate things. But
for the listener out there, Tom does a phenomenal job of prepping us for this show.
To me, the defining moment with Ryan is when he's sitting there talking to Sam Elliott. He's now achieved his mark, and he's like, okay, I just had this gut-wrenching experience where I finally let my guard down and let somebody into my life, and they shit on me. And so now I'm kind of sitting here going, what was the whole purpose of this?
I mean, some people kind of pay double for that type of action, but
yeah. And to me, that's the point. Yeah, he might stay in his job, but he's not going to be doing it the same way. It's going to be going through the motions, because I think he's in absolute turmoil as to what his life is, what it's been, where he's going. He basically, by walking out on his speaking engagement at this ultra point, is this talk he was doing in Las Vegas to go see her. He basically threw away his career as a motivational speaker.
Yeah.
And so now he's going to he doesn't have that. He doesn't have this whole perception. He's in complete turmoil, and he's staying in his job not because he likes it or that he's good at it. It's because that's all he's got left, and he's questioning every aspect of it.
The primary thing that I think of as an audience member in this, and which is why I even posed the question to begin with, at the beginning of the film, when you get to know who he is and that he defines himself so much by the mode of transportation that he's constantly in, that all these little habits and pieces are where he feels comfortable, and that's his home. When that starts to be threatened or taken away from because he is the protagonist in this, you sense that same dread in you as an audience member. Don't take away this guy's life. This is the only thing that he really knows. I mean, we've literally said that this is 43 miserable days at home. He is more comfortable in all of these other spaces. And to put him back in an environment where he would have to spend his entire existence in that, you're like, no, don't take that away from him. But at the same point, when it's given back to him, after she leaves and they scuttle the fire by internet program, and he gets to keep that. It feels like such a deflating note that it's like, I don't know if this is what I want from my life anymore.
I've had multiple experiences because I traveled a lot in my profession and had to go to remote locations to do hearings and stay over. And I always commented about how it is so amazing how you can feel so alone in a large body of people. And he is just the opposite. He feels like he's thriving in this remote experience where he doesn't want to be connected with anybody, and he's enjoying being in this group, and that's all gone. So I don't find that he's going to be appreciative of that situation anymore.
Well, I think one of the things that, to me, Tom, why I like the question, what I like having a little bit of time to think about it as well, is that to me the fundamental question you're asking gets down to the way you read the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Is it hopeful or is it not? Essentially, can he win his soul back, or is he just destined to be this loner the rest of his life? And I take it, Kieran, you read the ending pretty hopefully.
Yes.
It sounds like Dana, you do as well. I'm so ambiguous about the ending, which I think I love the movie so much. Because every time I go back to it, it's this really unique situation that he's in. And I think, personally, what he's going to go through now is his own purgatory, in a sense. Because I think he put himself out there this one time, hoping for something more, and he's finding out he doesn't want to feel that pain again, which is, I think, why he also pulls himself away from his siblings. He doesn't want to be in that pain. And I don't know. I just think he finds himself in a purgatory. So I think it's not as the worst outcome for him, but it's not the best either.
And I just want to throw on top, we have the benefit of watching this thing years later, knowing that his line of work is not sustainable. And
Correct, yeah.
And the movie does kind of lead us that way. You know, yeah, we're putting you back on the road. It's like, yeah, but for how long? Like, probably not long. So
Yeah.
he is going to have to make a decision at some point.
All right. How did Ryan find Alex's home address but not know she had a family?
To me, that's like LinkedIn or something. I mean, or business cards. I mean, I don't know.
Who has their home address on a business card?
No, you're right. I don't know.
And the most predominant way in 2009 that you would have tried to find somebody is by white pages, but they listed everybody as a marital couple. So it would have said the husband's name and Alex Goran.
This might be a very fair nitpick. Not my area of expertise. I don't know.
I mean, I would love a very clever solution to this, but it feels, as much as that is a gut punch to show up at the door and do that, it feels a little neat that she could somehow separate all of that out there without and that he just wouldn't have any idea.
Maybe she's mentioned it in passing. I live on this street in Chicago, or maybe she's unlisted. She's gone out of her way to be unlisted because she's living this double life.
But this is the kind of nitpick to me that it's hand waving. I'm like, I'm in the reality of the movie. I don't really think about it personally, but that's just me. It sounds like it bothers you a little bit, Tom. I'm like, oh, he just finds it.
I wouldn't say it bothers me like an itch in the back of my brain type of thing, but it's certainly something I've thought about multiple times when watching this movie. All right. If you want to give something that actually bothers me, it's her getting mad at him for nearly exposing her.
I mean, it's gaslighting. It's finest.
Yeah, you 100% have to have that conversation. If you are that close, it's like, hey, you are the parentheses. Right? I'm not in this for anything other than my second life.
The conversation that she has is that I thought we were on the same page. No, because you didn't give all of the details of your backstory. How could they possibly be on the same page? Not to mention, she knows that by going with him away for a weekend, this is not something that's just casual anymore. That's a girlfriend activity.
Oh, she is sinister. I mean, she is evil, and that's one of the geniuses of this movie is the ultimate bait and switch, where like you have Anna Kendrick saying to Clint, "Go get her, like you have something," and he's like, "You know what? I think I do," and he goes to get her, and she's like, "Oh, you're just a hoe to me," like, and then all of a sudden it's like, "Oh my God, no." Clooney was getting played. She was the player, and it's a total bait and switch. It's a genius tactic. It's somewhere Hitchcock is winking and smiling in the distance. He would love this film.
Yeah, I love just the idea that she has this entire life, hasn't mentioned it once to him, like not even like begun to, and it shows the kind of compartmentalization that she has to be able to live that kind of existence. And it's a brutal scene. No, it's one of those moves where is he going to put himself out there like that again? And I just don't think so.
Well, this is one of those situations where for decades, the man has been in control, where he's leading a double life. All of a sudden now the woman is in control, and she's the one doing the double life, and she's the one dictating how things are going to be, and he's the one caught off guard as the man. And it's a complete role reversal of where things have been for the previous 7,500 years in film.
All right. So any final remaining questions for anyone else?
I have a quick goofy one. Is Clooney an actor portraying a bad dancer, or is he just a bad dancer? Is he trying to act like is he trying to dance bad, or is he just a horrific dancer?
He has no musical ability. He can't sing. If you saw the Christmas special that Bill Murray did with George Clooney's in, he can't sing. He has no musical ability. He's just a bad dancer.
To answer my question there.
Completely, he has no rhythm at all.
And it's crazy because his aunt was such a famous singer and dancer.
Oh, yeah. I know.
I have a hard time believing that he has absolutely no rhythm, but I think it's in a similar fashion to how Anna Kendrick is singing a tone-deaf version of Time After Time, and we all know that she can actually sing.
Tone-deaf is harsh. It's not that bad.
It's worse than karaoke.
Yes. That's a little harsh.
She's definitely the vast difference between her doing Cups and doing Time After Time in this movie.
That's actually exactly that's the spirit of my question. It's like, that's a good singer acting like a bad singer, and he's just a bad dancer.
Anna Kendrick's a phenomenal singer. She's was in the filmed version of the stage musical the last 5 years, and her rendition of that opening number is fantastic. She's a great singer. So this is her being, pretending to be, well, not pretending, but succeeding to be a bad singer.
All right. Anyone else? I mean, at 3 hours and 17 minutes, we might as well throw in whatever.
I told you I'm a harbinger of doom around here. Even when it's not necessarily me all the time, I'm a harbinger of doom.
This is going to be a very tough episode to edit. All right. Well, if not, then I would like to thank our guests for being on with us. Kieran, where are you and where can people find you? Or what are you working on and where can people find you?
Best Picture Cast on Instagram, on Twitter. We're now on Blue Sky, on Letterboxd, all those places, all the platforms. Best Picture Cast. You'll have fun with it if you like movies, if you've seen a bunch of the Best Picture winning movies. Our back catalog goes all the way back. We started, I think, the same year you guys did, 2020. And, we have about 20 and change Best Picture winners left. So we're getting to the end of our mission here before we embark on new journeys. But we have lots of back catalog content there, and every 2 weeks there's a new episode. So whether it's a Best Picture winner or something else, it's coming your way. But in January, we are going to be trudging through. Best Picture Cast, find us, and we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, he gives himself 2 weeks to edit these 3.5 hour episodes. I wonder what that world is like. But by the way, that was also the closest to a full New York accent I think I've ever heard you slip into in the amount of hours I've listened to you. You were so close to. You think you're better than me?
It sneaks out every so often. So,
all right. But Peterson, what are you working on, and where can people find you?
Yes, you can read me at psychodriving.com. You can find me at War Starts at Midnight. Social handles are at Peterson W. Hill at Letterboxd, Twitter, or X, Blue Sky, and Instagram.
All right. Dad, dare I say any remaining thoughts?
No, I am slowly trying to get the Best Picture nominees, although I will say...
we have no nominees yet.
Yeah, we got an idea what's coming.
I know. The ones that are the prolific ones that are supposed to be. But I will say that I started a new show with your mother, Man on the Inside with Ted Danson on Netflix. It's fun. It's kind of cute. Especially
a reminder to the audience that this is the man who also said Unfrosted was fun.
Ooh.
Okay, it doesn't matter. I mean,
it does. It so does.
Yes. Some things are fun. You don't have to have like major quality every time you watch something.
It certainly does not have that.
Yeah, well, whatever.
I mean, to be fair, I watched Sing Sing with you and Conclave, I think over the Thanksgiving weekend. And man, if those are indicative of what we're supposedly going to get for the Best Picture nominees this year, I thought it was so mediocre and average.
Oh, really?
I cannot be more disappointed by seeing that film.
That's a little harsh.
Oh, Dana seems
it's
the exact opposite.
It's the high expectations that I had going into it, and then seeing it, and it's like it's aggressively fine. Nobody really stood out. I didn't think Ralph Fiennes did anything like extraordinary. Tucci was okay. Even Lithgow, who I adore in most everything that he does, is kind of like, I'm there. Yeah. So it
just strikes as the movie that's going to be nominated for 9 Oscars and wins none. You know, that's what it felt like to me. But I really enjoyed it myself.
Well, maybe it's the victim of high expectations at this point for me. But between that and I thought I was going to get a lot more out of Sing Sing, and it was okay. It's really carried by its lead performances. And other than that, I didn't really think the direction was very good on it. The fact that I still have Dune Part 2, Challengers, and I guess now we'll throw in Wicked as my top 3 by a good stretch at this point.
Did you see Anora?
I have not yet. I haven't had a chance yet.
See what?
I haven't seen Amelia Perez either, or Blitz, or Brutalist, or any of these other ones.
I saw Blitz. I thought Blitz was very well done.
I've been predicting for a while that there were going to be years in this decade, like right in the middle, where it was going to be kind of meh.
But this is an in-between year. This is definitely an in-between year.
Last year we had a lot of really great films, and this year I'm just... okay.
It's an in-between year.
Well, in the even numbered decades, I think we have like 3 or 4 years right in a row of these where it's trying to figure out what the next identity of film is going to be. So, but all that said, I want to thank everybody for enduring this long slog with us. If you've made it to this end of the podcast, I salute you. But thank you again for listening. We'll be back next week. The book says, we might be through with the past, but the past ain't through with us. Next week for our 241st episode, we welcome our newest celebrity guests, Ralph Esparza and Michael Willoughby, to discuss a Paul Thomas Anderson staple, Magnolia from 1999. Written and directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. Music by John Bryan. Starring Tom Cruise, Philip Baker Hall, Philip Seymour Hoffman, William H. Macy, Julianne Moore, and Jason Robart. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you.
That's REELGOOD.
Please like, follow, rate, and review, or whatever on whichever platform you have so that more can join in on our fun. You can also email the show at thenewRonnieDuncanStudios.com or at greatestalltimemoviepodcast@gmail.com. or find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, or TikTok at the handle @GModePodcast. The Greatest Movie of All Time is a production of Ryan Duncan Studios. Our show is mixed, edited, and written by Thomas Duncan. Our music is thanks to Purple Planet Music. Our technical provider and distributor is Captivate FM.